Good evening. I will call the August Planning Commission meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. As you know, we've got a heavy agenda tonight, so we're going to work through it as efficiently as possible. I'm Mayor Zach Bruink, Chairman of the Planning Commission. If you want to introduce yourself.
I'm Dave Laspa, the City Engineer and Secretary of the Planning Commission.
Tim Burkhauser, Commission Member.
Brian Aaron, Commission Member.
I'm Kelly Rosecrans, Park and Recreation Commission Representative, to this commission, representative.
Todd Furkey, City Alderman and Commission Member.
Shane Burkhart, Commission Member.
Thank you. And city staff.
Adam Tagan, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Sue Schill, City Attorney.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here this evening. First item on our agenda is the approval of the report of the July 7th Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, what are your wishes regarding that report?
Motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion by Burkhauser, second by Aaron. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move into a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Next item on our agenda is maps and plats received. There were no other maps or plats received. On our agenda this evening are a number of public hearings. I would entertain a motion, Commissioners, to combine the public hearings related to the Aspirus Clinics number 6 annexation request, the public hearing, the three public hearings subsequent to that, if you so choose, considering they're all related to the same request. I'd entertain a motion to combine those. Kelly, motion, and a second by Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we'll have the public hearing combined. So what that will do this evening is when I open the public hearing, the requester will have the opportunity to speak on their request to the commission. Then, following the requester's introduction of the project or request, those opposed to the request will be given 5 minutes to respond and to speak. And so questions, I want to make a point, questions should be directed to me, the chairperson, not at the requester. Following the 5-minute individual person response, the requester will have 10 minutes to respond to the questions that were raised. So requester speaks, those that are opposed speak for 5 minutes each, and then the requester will have the opportunity for 10 minutes to respond following that. Then we'll close the public hearing, and then we'll move into action, and where the commission will move through questions that they have for the applicant this evening. So hopefully those housekeeping items make sense, and we'll have a smooth arrangement there. All right, item 3 on our agenda is the public hearing on Plan 140476, Cross Paths LLC. The applicant is requesting an amendment to an existing planned unit development to allow for a modification of their existing master sign plan within the B2 General Commercial District. The subject property is located at 1000 East Riverview Expressway, in which parcel number 34-11793, in which I will open the public hearing. And if the requester, is the requester here, Adam? Okay, if the requester would come to the podium, please, and make sure the microphone, there's a button that says push, make sure the green light is on, and introduce yourself and tell us about the request, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Bryce Nelson. I am the current owner of Cross Paths LLC. We are requesting revisions to the sign on A Street to allow us to lease to national tenants. We have made major improvements since purchasing that property in 2008 and have found it extremely difficult to attract national new businesses and tenants to our location. Some of them are even requiring a street frontage signage in order to even be considered for a lease tenant, and so we are requesting revisions to the pylon sign on A Street to allow our tenants to have exposure at that location. You have been provided with a potential picture of the new signage, as well as the location at the entrance to our property from 8th Street. Is there any questions?
Thank you for the request. First of all, I commend you for the improvements that you have made to the property. I think it looks very nice, and most people would probably agree. It'd be nice to have the neighboring tenants now take heed and notice and do improvements too, but that's out of your control, obviously. So thank you for that. Commissioners, did you have any questions for the requester?
I do.
Alderperson Berkey, please.
Yeah. So the request that you're asking for is just to install 2 additional 5x8 signs below the existing Shopko, Cops, and that, I don't know if that's a.
Good
small
question.
marquee.
Yes, we will revise the signage up. If you notice on the original, should have been provided with an original picture without renovations. We will move those signs up to allow for additional cabinet installation.
Is that the only sign that you're looking at updating or
Revising, correct.
revising? Nothing on the Riverview Expressway?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that's not on your property, as I understood.
Riverview Expressway entrance is not our property, correct. The 8th Street property is our entrance.
Right.
And the sign that we're requesting revisions is in the middle of our entrance access from 8th Street.
Okay. Commissioners, other questions for the requester? City staff, did you have any comments? I know that you, Adam, you had some conditions in there. I guess we'll move into that after we close the public hearing. So thank you for coming to the body this evening. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the request here this evening? And for the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request? Okay, and then I would ask anybody that's wishing to speak in opposition to the request, going once, twice, and 3 times, so we'll close the public hearing. We'll move into item number 4, which is action on Plan 140476 Cross Paths LLC. Adam, did you want to comment on your conditions for recommendation?
Yeah, certainly. The sign is in an unusual location. It does somewhat affect visibility as you're pulling out onto 8th Street. So I was cognizant of that when I was reviewing it. However, it is only a right turn only exit, so really you only need to look to the traffic coming from the left and then pay attention to pedestrians on the sidewalk. So I did note one of the conditions is that if the traffic flow does change and they now can do left-hand turns or something like that in the future, that we do need to get that vision triangle clear. So that's why the condition says all signs would need to be moved at least 10 feet off the ground. Otherwise, I am recommending that no more than 2 additional panels be allowed, just trying to be cognizant of their need for signage, but also not overwhelming. It is a very unusual situation because they have none of their own freestanding signage on their piece of property. So normally I'm restrictive on signage, but this made sense. So we did recommend approval subject to those 3 conditions.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments, or discussion on the request? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Excuse me
Oh,
one second.
please.
I just want, so the owner understands that if they ever change that to a left-hand turn too, that the sign has to be moved, and that's what it says on this write-up. And other than that, the sign has been there for a long time. I don't see any reason why you can't put 2 additional signs on it. They're not gonna move the sign any. But just so you understand that if they ever make a left-hand turn there, into the mall, that then the sign's got to be moved. Is that correct? Understand that?
Correct,
Other than that, I have no questions.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
I will make that motion to
I'll
approve.
second it.
We have a motion to approve,
I'll
and
second
a
it.
second by Shane. Kelly had the motion. Subject to the conditions that are in the staff recommendation. Okay. All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, moving to a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. That passes. Thank you for your investment. Thank you for making the improvements out there, and hopefully this will aid in your assistance to land a nice national tenant for us. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is item number 5, the Steve Clavine annexation request. The applicant is requesting annexation of .46 acres of property located west of 16th Street South and approximately 600 feet south of Rosewood Avenue, parcel number 0700902C, from the town of Grand Rapids. Steve here to speak? Okay. Dave?
Steve wasn't able to attend. The city is working with Mr. Clavine and his Rosewood subdivision This property is presently in the town of Grand Rapids. It's supposed to be constructed into a stormwater retention pond, and once that's completed to city specifications, he has agreed to dedicate it to the city for stormwater retention.
Okay. Commissioners, what are your wishes
Dave,
regarding?
that's the intent, not to build a house in there?
Right. He wants to finish his development agreement with the city and complete the pond, and then he can move on.
Because I believe he owns quite a little more property there, and I'm wondering why maybe he didn't try to annex more. Is that it?
No, that's all. He's annexed everything that he owns. Mr. Dave Ramsden owns the remainder.
I see. Thank
Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion on the request.
I'll motion.
you. Move, second.
We have a motion to approve the request and a second. Motion by Shane, seconded by Fran. Any other discussion? Hearing none, moving to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? That passes. Okay. Moving to item number 6, which is the Aspirus Clinics Incorporated annexation request. The applicant is requesting an annexation of 16.85 acres of property located on the northwest corner of Chestnut Street and State Highway 54. Parcel numbers 0700312, 0700313, and 0700313B from the town of Grand Rapids. Commissioners, maybe the requester at this point would like to come forward and speak to the commission. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and turning on the microphone. Thank you.
I'm Tom Velker, President of Aspirus Doctors Clinic. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present our proposal to you. I will be proposing the first part, and then Dean Danner is the President of Aspirus Clinics, and Gary Wojciechowski is the Director of Projects for Aspirus, and they'll also be speaking. Your job at the Planning Commission is an important one in the function of the city, and what we're going to present to you, we're looking for your input for zoning changes and for annexation so that we can proceed with our project. We hope that you'll see that this is an appropriate project for the land that we are acquiring, and will help, or will continue with your mission to safeguard the proper use of the land in Wisconsin Rapids. We think that our project fits nicely in the expansion plans the city has for the 54 corridor. And also, it's adjacent to other medical facilities, so we think it fits well that way. I've been at Doctors Clinic for 27 years. I'm excited about this project. We think it's something that's really needed for the healthcare in Wisconsin Rapids. I'll be telling you why this is important, and then Dean will talk to you about some of the economic benefits for the city. And then Gary will talk about some of the details of the project. And I need someone with computer expertise to make this big again. That's my fancy term for enlarging, is make it big. There we go. Doctors Clinic has been providing care for the patients in Wisconsin Rapids for almost 60 years. We have 34 providers and over 100 employees, and we've all worked and lived in the city of Wisconsin Rapids. A recent national study found Aspirus to be the most recognized and most preferred healthcare system in Wisconsin Rapids. That includes Riverview and Marshfield. Our clinic was built 3 years ago, and we've experienced rapid growth, and that's what's prompting the need for this proposal. Over the last 5 years, our annual growth in clinic visits has been 34%. and it just keeps going on. With the increased demand, we need to add on. We have plans to add on to the clinic that were incorporated when we first built the clinic, but with the changes occurring in healthcare, we thought now would be a time to look at the whole strategy of healthcare delivery and make our addition something that really fits for what's needed in this day and age. The Affordable Care Act, or healthcare reform, was passed a few years ago, and it's really changed the way that healthcare is delivered. We used to be paid for fee-for-service. If you got sick or hurt, you'd come to the clinic or come to the hospital, and we fix you, and we send you a bill. And if you got sick or hurt again, you come back and we do it all over again. With the Affordable Care Act, payers are now requiring us to provide higher quality care and also to provide that care at a much more cost-efficient manner. In order to make that happen, we have to have better control of the patients that we are serving. It's what we call care coordination. It's no longer good enough just to treat someone well once they walk into your door. You've got to be taking care of them all the time. Right now, if a patient of mine is admitted to the hospital, often they're transferred up elsewhere, usually to Marshfield, and I have no knowledge of what's going on with them, no input into their care. Sometimes tests are being duplicated because they don't know that maybe we did a CAT scan and now they're going to do the same tests again. And then they're discharged, and a little later, they show up at my door. I had a patient about 2 weeks ago, a 50-some-year-old woman who had congestive heart failure and has had it for years. She was hospitalized, transferred to Marshfield, treated there for a few days, treated appropriately, some medications were changed, and she was discharged home to see me a week later. She showed up, and the first I knew of this whole encounter was when I walked into the door to see what was going on with her. I had no knowledge that she had even been hospitalized, no way of knowing what medications were changed, no records from Marshfield, and it just makes the care delivery difficult. We were able to call and get faxes and talk to nurses and get an accurate medication list with some difficulty. People think that our electronic medical records, which pretty much all groups have now, talk to each other, but that's not true. The system we have at Aspirus is different from Riverview, which is different from Marshfield, and if you're not in the same system, it doesn't matter if it's on the electronic record, they can't connect to each other, it's difficult to get those results. In order to provide the care in an efficient, effective manner, we need to know what's going on with the patients. Care coordination also involves other services that are provided to the patient while they are getting their care, and that doesn't just mean in the hospital. As they're being discharged, it's important to have discharge planners, social workers, home health nurses, even have their primary care doctor involved at the time of discharge so everyone knows what's going on, what's expected, when the patient needs to be seen, what tests have to be done. And that's extremely difficult to do if it's not all within one system. Of the healthcare dollars spent on citizens of Wisconsin Rapids, only 22% of that money is spent in Wisconsin Rapids. Almost 80% goes out of town. Some of that is necessary. If you're going to have heart surgery, you're going to go out of town to get it. But a lot of it is things that can be done here in Wisconsin Rapids. We would like to bring back whatever can be done in Wisconsin Rapids, we would like to bring that back to town and do it here. It does bring more dollars back to town, but also it's better patient care. It's much more convenient, and again, it's care given in a more coordinated fashion. So what we're proposing is a new model. We're expanding the clinic into what we call a super clinic or a hospital of the future. It's primarily a clinic expansion that has a hospital component. Some of these things that we're talking about can't be done without a hospital, but mostly we want to bring in more services that can keep more care in town. It'll be a lot smaller than a traditional hospital, but again, it'll house the services that we need, particularly things like the social worker interface with the home nursing and those kind of things. It also will allow for a lot more specialists to come down on a more regular basis. We frequently get requests from more specialists to come down, and we just don't have room to put them. And if they're here more regularly, there are many more things that they can be doing right during that same visit when the patient arrives. This project is one that will improve the health care of our patients, improve the health of our community, and it will allow us to manage health care in a more cost-effective manner. And now Dean will come and talk about the positive financial implications for Wisconsin Rapids.
Thank you, Dr. Velker. I first would like to express my appreciation to the committee members for hearing our story tonight. I'm very proud to be affiliated with Aspirus Doctors Clinic and to share the vision that they have for the future. Aspirus values our relationship with the Riverview, with the Wisconsin Rapids community, and we believe this is just one more step in showing our commitment to this community and to the services that are being provided. The project itself is about a $25 to $30 million state-of-the-art facility. As Dr. Velker indicated, it is a super clinic with a hospital component, so it technically is a hospital. We're looking at somewhere between 75,000 and 110,000 square foot expansion, which is in addition to the existing 57,000 square feet. So you can see that this is a significant expansion of the existing footprint. The clinic expansion, as was mentioned, is a 10 to 25 bed inpatient hospital component. The reason of the range is we still have programming to do and to determine exactly what will be in the facility, but we believe it will be a much smaller hospital than the traditional hospitals you see of today, many of which are struggling across the country because they need to fill beds, and that's not where healthcare is going. It's moving away from inpatient care into more outpatient and ambulatory care. The economic impact of this is really exciting, I think. So not only is a new healthcare delivery model that's going to position us for the future and position our patients to get the best health care available in the area, but it's also going to create jobs. We're estimating somewhere between 225 and 275 new jobs will be created with a payroll somewhere between $8.5 and $11 million. Now these aren't low-paying jobs; these are skilled people. And there'll be doctors, there'll be other types of high-level skill sets that will bring lots of payroll to the community as well as their spend as community members. In addition to that, during the project, we will see somewhere between 50 and 125 construction jobs at any given time during the project. When Doctors Clinic was originally built, Aspirus committed to trying to keep as much of the local contractors involved in the project. We committed to making sure that we gave them preferential treatment and looking at the jobs, and we did that. 75% of the work done at Doctors Clinic was done by local contractors, and we're very proud of that fact. Another fact is that currently Aspirus Doctors Clinic contributes $275,000 a year in property taxes. With this project, we are estimating somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 in additional property taxes, which will be paid on an annual basis. But for me, what I think is most exciting about this is this entire economic package will come down to somewhere around $50 million of annual economic activity. We will not only provide an economic stimulus to the area, but I think it will also be a catalyst, as was mentioned before, to help generate additional interest in that Highway 54 corridor and bring additional expansion into that area. So we think that's very exciting, and we really are looking forward to working with the community to make this happen. With that, I'd like to introduce Gary Wojciechowski, who's going to talk to you more specifically about the facility itself.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Planning and Zoning Commission for giving us this opportunity to talk to you in regards to this project. It's going to be a very exciting project for the city of Wisconsin Rapids, and I'd like to give you some insights as to what we're planning.
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I'd like to give you some insights as to what the project will be about and what we're planning with regards to the design of the building. We're proposing a lot of green space in the areas that will not be developed as part of the original building construction, and part of that green space will be developing biking paths, walking paths around the site to assist the public. We're also going to be optimizing the water retention features as part of the stormwater runoff for the project to enhance the site to create more aesthetics for the public. We're going to be creating some healing gardens that the public can walk around and enjoy, along with enhanced landscaping around the site. With regards to the facility, we're going to also be incorporating a lot of the technology and design that we put into the existing doctor's clinic relevant to energy management and consumption. We're going to be doing things extensively with water efficiency to minimize the water usage of the facility. And with regard to the site development, we'll be taking into consideration all the stormwater management requirements relevant to the site that are necessary for good development. If I can draw your attention to the monitors, what you can see right now is a proposed plan of the site. To the right-hand side of the monitor, you can see the existing doctor's clinic is located in that position, along with the existing parking area, and you can see the Peach Street entrance off of Highway 54. To the left of the existing doctor's clinic is the proposed building expansion, and as Dean mentioned, the building is proposed to be between 75 and 110,000 square feet. This is a worst case or biggest case scenario, so to speak, for the building, and the parking that would be required to accommodate the building. To the left of the parking area is the green area, which is future development and what we're initially proposing with the project, green area that the community can take advantage of with regards to biking paths and walking trails around the site. One of the things I'd like to also point out is that Aspirus is committed to creating biking trails around the site, and we're proposing that we would connect up with the future biking route, which is off of 20th and Peach Street, and circulate that around the project site, and then connect it back up to the biking trail that currently exists on the other side of Highway 54 by Peach Street. So that would be one of the enhancements we would be proposing with the site development. This evening, we have 3 requests for the Planning and Zoning Commission that we believe fall in line with the planned development of the Highway 54 corridor. The 3 zoning requests that we have of the Planning Commission tonight are, number 1, that the area that is going to be purchased by, or the property that is going to be purchased by Aspirus, be directly annexed into the city of Wisconsin Rapids. Number 2, that the zoning of this property be changed from an R2 zoning limitation to a B5 zoning limitation. And number 3, that conditional use permits be issued to Aspirus for the development of a medical office building, clinic, and hospital. With regards to the project timeline, we're anticipating that construction will start as early as the fall of 2015. We're also thinking that, based upon past experience, the project will wrap up with construction about summer of 2017. And then there'll be some time that will be allocated for building occupancy, preparation, and equipment installation. In closing, I'd like to just share with you that I've been with Aspirus for 25 years, and my primary role with Aspirus has been design and construction of buildings, hospitals, clinics, and different facilities. Approximately 8 years ago, the board of directors for Aspirus gave a mandate to us on our with regards to our projects that everything we do must be done in the context of it being done in a green and environmentally friendly design process. To that end, in 2005, Aspirus proudly received the first Green LEED Gold Award for healthcare design and construction in the state of Wisconsin. This was for our NICU, which is a newborn intensive care unit at Aspirus Wausau Hospital. We took those lessons learned from that project and infused those into the design and construction of the Aspirus Doctors Clinic. And it's our intent that we would continue with that process with this project. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Belker.
In summary, We think this expansion of Doctors Clinic is what is needed in the day of healthcare reform. We can't continue to practice the old way. We've got to be able to adjust to the future. This is a significant investment by Aspirus and one that will really beneficially impact the city. And we think it does fit with the zoning requirements for property along the Highway 54 corridor. We think that's the right place for this project. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. At this time, those wishing to address the body, since we've combined the public hearings and will formally open the public hearing on the requests here this evening, we will take action separately, though, on the requests. And as has been discussed, or mentioned, there are 3 requests in front of this body tonight: the annexation request, the zoning change from R2 to B5, and then subsequently the conditional use to allow the personal and professional services within the B5 district. So at this time, I would entertain anyone else that's wishing to speak in favor of the request. So we had the requester formally give their presentation. I would open it up and ask for the second time if individuals want to speak in favor of the request, please, and then introduce yourself for the minutes, name and address, please. As well as just a reminder, you'll have 5 minutes to speak on your request, or to speak in favor of the request at this time.
Again, thank you for considering this request. My name is Jeffrey Kostyuk. I'm employed at Aspirus Clinic. I work and live, shop, and pay taxes in Wisconsin Rapids, as do the majority of providers and physicians at Aspirus Doctors Clinic. I do my best to provide effective, medically current, safe OB/GYN and surgical care to patients here. And we continue to have outstanding medical care in our community provided by the community physicians, ancillary providers, and at Riverview Hospital. For the most part, our problem is not a quality of care that is delivered here. However, in our country as well as in our community, we are at a financial crossroads for monetary compensation for that health care. As you are all aware, I hope, there has been a dramatic inflation in healthcare costs in our country to the point of unaffordability. Due to this continued unaffordable inflationary trend, the actual payers for healthcare in our country are changing the financial landscape. Insurance companies and government payers, especially with the new Affordable Care Act regulations, have plans set in motion to change that landscape. They will be requiring that healthcare providing entities shoulder the financial risk of providing care. Healthcare providers, including hospitals, will not be paid for every individual service that is provided to patients. There will be globalization of payments according to overall diagnoses and therapeutic bundling. Therefore, whatever numbers of tests, costs, and procedures that are necessary to take care of somebody, global fees will be in place to reimburse for that care that will not necessarily account for the acceptable or unacceptable differences and variances in patient response, patient demographics, and patient compliance. There will also be an emphasis on care that keeps you well as opposed to only care when you are sick. With these changes, there will be an emphasis on wellness care and exams, outpatient treatments and procedures, and reduced inpatient hospital care. At the same time, there will be checks and balances in place, mandated by these insurance companies and government payers, to assure that medical care quality, needed quantity, and patient respect is maintained. In short, healthcare systems will be required to provide high-quality and efficient healthcare services under a system of restricted financial reimbursements. And in order to continue to provide healthcare services in this changing financial environment, healthcare delivery systems must change, and those systems will need to closely monitor and control the care provided to maintain quality and efficiencies in this restricted financial environment. And in addition, and I believe this is very important, smaller healthcare systems will need to align themselves with larger regional systems to take advantage of economies of scale and contract negotiation power. And this alignment does not mean that smaller systems have to completely or even be majority-owned and are directed by those larger systems. The proposed expansion of the physical plant and the clinical services at Aspirus Doctors Clinic is needed to meet the requirements of this changing healthcare environment. As a healthcare system, Aspirus must now monitor and direct healthcare services within that system from the initial patient encounter with the family doctor or family provider, through potential referrals for needed specialty and subspecialty medical and/or surgical care, to ensure that the care is provided with maintenance of quality, patient respect, and compassion. And I also see that Aspirus has a responsibility to make sure that they have provisions in place that to the majority extent, this care is provided within this community. Now, there is a controversy here, and I have allegiances on both sides of that controversy. I'm primarily employed by Aspirus Clinics. However, I also work in, and I'm the medical director of the Wound Healing Center at Riverview. I deliver babies and perform gynecologic surgical procedures at Riverview. I'm very comfortable with the care and the compassion provided by staff at Riverview Hospital for my patients, and in fact, that staff has often taught me a thing or two about respect and compassion. So, I feel torn with these allegiances. So does the building of a new super clinic mean that I want another hospital here in Wisconsin Rapids? Does it mean that I want to break my ties and stop taking care of patients at Riverview Hospital? Does it mean that I want Riverview Hospital to close? In my heart of hearts, the answer to that question is no. What I would like to see is an alignment between Aspirus Clinics and Riverview Hospital, and at some point maybe even a larger multi-regional healthcare entity, to meet the needs of the healthcare in this community. However, if that's not possible, I believe that Aspirus has the best plan for the healthcare future of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the request? And for the, ma'am, please head to the podium and introduce yourself, in which you'll have 5 minutes, and I'm going to make sure I do a better job of watching the time. Otherwise, we'll all be getting 10 minutes or more.
My name is Beverly Kimball. I have lived here all my life. I am not good at public speaking. I am in favor of this because I do agree that it is needed. And we have doctored at Riverview for several years. And we have, I'm sure everyone has experienced something not very nice on occasion. We have had a couple of those at Riverview. One was in the emergency room for my husband. And the doctor attending at the time came to the conclusion that he did not know what was wrong with my husband. He said, "I'm leaving now. I'm done for the day. Would you like to go home or would you like to go to Marshfield?" For us, that wasn't how we liked being treated. On another occasion, this was not our family member. I had gone with someone to the emergency room. He had previously been treated at Marshfield Clinic. When he got to, he was very well taken care of by the emergency people that came and picked him up. When he got to Riverview, they said, we're not going to do anything here. Marshfield started this. They can take care of you. Now, I don't know if things like this have happened to other people, but it did happen to us. So I agree that something needs to be done. Over the years, we do not use the hospital here anymore. And for some of the reasons is my husband had heart problems, so they were done at Marshfield. Consequently, because of that, the facilities there have provided all the needs that he has. And part of it is what I think Dr. Velker has been explaining, that the plan is, I think it would help the situation for getting things together. And we would like to come back here to Wisconsin Rapids and be treated. So we are one of the people that are within the 100 feet. And we are in agreement with this. We think it would be a good asset. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the request? To the podium, introduce yourself and name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Ashley Holler. I'm one of the stenographers at Aspirus. My address is actually Arpin. I've worked for Aspirus for 6 years, and I've read some current articles in the paper about the project. Some of them addressing that employees working at the doctor's clinic are coming from Wausau. I'm actually one of those very few employees. I'm actually employed by Aspirus Wausau Hospital. However, I spend 90% of my time at the doctor's clinic. Wisconsin Rapids is actually my town. I live in the country. But when I shop, I grocery shop here. When I buy my gas here. When I was hired at Wausau, I wasn't excited about driving 45 minutes to work one way for 3 years. And then the clinic opened and added the imaging department, so I was very excited about that. And I am much more excited about the expansion. I think that for my family, it's a very good thing. I have grandparents and parents who currently go to Marshfield and heard of the opportunity about the expansion and are excited about it as well. I have small children as well, and for me right now, the decision of living in the country and trying to decide what I'm going to do after hours when the walk-in is closed, or if it's something more emergent, is where am I going to go for ER care? And for me right now, it's I'm going to Wausau, driving 45 minutes, or my personal opinion is I would go to Marshfield secondly if it was something more urgent that's 20 minutes away. I feel that Riverview does a good job, and I'm sure that they provide great care. I've never doctored there. But I think competition maybe is a good thing. It may help each entity also work and strive to provide better patient care as well.
Thank you, Ashley. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the request? And the third and maybe fourth final time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request? Okay. Now we'll move into those wishing to speak in the opposition to the request. You will be invited to the podium, same process, 5 minutes, as I'm now managing the time up here, as well as just make a comment about redundancy, that if redundant comments are made over and over and over and over again, that it isn't constructive to the project and to the request and the job of the commission here tonight. So I just urge you to make sure that you make your point and stress points that have not been repeated by others. So with that, I will, Jim, looks like you'd like to come and address the body.
Hello, Mayor and Commission members. Having been the one that brought the paramedic programs to Southwood County, I can tell you that Riverview and their foundations was the prime leader in going to train our people. That includes Nakusa, United, and Wisconsin Rapids. I've listened with interest on this, and I see this as corporate greed. How can all of these millions of dollars that they purport to spend here going to help if Riverview was to downsize or close? It's a no-win situation. It would have a negative impact, like with jobs, with income, and other services. Riverview, since the move of the doctor's clinic, has stood up and tackled the challenges and brought in specialists. We now have dermatologists, psychiatry, all sorts of specialists that are here. This is also a classic case of going to increase our health care costs and our insurance rates. How can you spend this amount of money without going to jack up the rates that they charge patients for tests and doctors? It's not needed here. All of the ambulance services that serve out of this area will transport to Wausau or Marshfield, as well as the helicopter that services this neck of the woods. And I would toss out a suggestion that you put this to a referendum for the taxpayers and the residents of this area. See if they want it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the request? Yes, sir. Please come to the front.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Bob McIlvain. In fact, I'm retired manager at JCPenney. I happen to live in Dr. Arndt's condo. We purchased that. Dr. Arndt was the original doctor, or one of the original doctors that started Doctor's Clinic in this community. I've known him and another friend of mine, Dr. Schaller, who just recently passed away. I can tell you these doctors would not be happy with what's going on here today. I also want to speak to this lady who says she had bad care at the hospital. I have used the emergency room. I have had carotid artery surgery, knee and hip replacement, along with cancer care. I have found their care to be #1 in this community or any place else that I have gone. In fact, it's my understanding this hospital is ranked in one of the top hospitals in the state, which speaks very kindly of the care that they give. The other issue another gentleman spoke to was the fact that they're expanding their care, and we also talked about costs. I think another issue in that area is that we have duplicated a lot of costs in this community by duplicating equipment for diagnostic tests. That is not an economic way of dealing with helping to reduce health care costs in this community. So I think you probably know I am opposed to this expansion. They do not, by the way, I should say I do doctor at Aspirus Clinic. And they do not normally refer you to the hospital or to Marshfield for those services. They always wanted to refer me to Wausau or Stevens Point where those services were offered. That is not doing our community a real service. Now, I can tell you, I do get my service here because I demand that my I be referred to either of those two operations. So anyhow, I hope that you people really think about this a lot before you approve something that may affect the viability of this hospital and the expansions that they've already made in this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Brennan, please come to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the commission. My name is Brennan Hagan. I live at 2110 Saratoga Street. My parcel or my property is just west of the 2.3 acres that Aspirus is looking to annex into the city. My question to them would be is what is the intent of the 2.3 acres north of what the current clinic is? I feel that this not only affects me directly, but my neighbors, due to the fact of loss of value to their properties, making it a commercial zone as opposed to residential. That affects the local jobs within the community as well. And I also feel that if Aspirus would have had the insight to foresee growth, that they should have looked for a larger area of property prior to purchasing west of 54. And I strongly urge you to reconsider the annexing of the 2.3 acres. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Ma'am, please.
I'm Carissa Lager. I am at 2111 Saratoga Street, Brennan's neighbor. Just a few points that I wanted to make, starting with 10 years ago, I came when we wanted to be annexed into the city. I fought that battle. At the time I fought that battle, I was told very adamantly when I wanted to put a small business on my location that there would never, ever be business on that side of 54. Ever. And I was dismissed. I see over the last few years things have changed. I know I'm just a small taxpayer. I know I don't probably matter a whole lot. But I do doctor at Aspirus, and I do the emergency room and other needs at Riverview. And I choose to go where I feel comfortable. Riverview has made a lot of changes in how they welcome the community and how they welcome their patients, and they make everybody feel like you're coming home versus you're being shipped out. The shipping out thing has to come to an end in this area because we do need to stay local, but I don't think opening up another hospital of the future is going to bring the best medical care and the best outcome for our patients. I did talk to Adam earlier about the fact that they were recommending that the Saratoga, there's the vacating of the 21st Place plans, hopefully, will be. We live on a dead end. We were also told by the committee that we weren't going to have to deal with this when Aspirus first built. We weren't going to have to deal with the traffic. That wasn't going to affect our residential homes, our area. Again, we are in front of you guys fighting this battle. Again, I've been told, after speaking with Adam, that they are not going to open up the end of Saratoga Street, that it should remain a dead end. Is it really, or is this just something that I'm going to hear and then going to find out when you guys mail me another letter that you've changed your minds on that? What do you do? What do you believe? We pay our taxes. That property's been there for over 70 years. Taxes have been collected on it one way or another. We do matter, and we should have a voice in what happens to our neighborhood. And no medical care is going to be perfect anywhere you go unless you're knowledgeable yourself. Don't be misled to think that new is better, because it isn't always necessarily so. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the request? Second time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the request? And for the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the request? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Donald Swanson. I live in the town of Saratoga. I've had care from the doctor's clinic since they were first in operation in the city of Wisconsin Rapids. And I've always had excellent care. I currently have a personal physician in the Aspirus Clinic that I'm very happy with. The problem that I see is it appears to me that this is a kind of a power grab by Aspirus. And I think that we have a Riverview Hospital that has served our community faithfully for so many years, for as long as I can certainly remember. And I've never had unsatisfactory service there. Personally, I do not see a need for another hospital. I've always been satisfied with Riverview, and I think they deserve the opportunity to continue as they have done in the past in providing the Wisconsin Rapids area with excellent care. I sort of feel that in spite of the loyalty I feel for my personal physician, I may seriously consider finding a new physician at Riverview Hospital rather than continuing with Aspirus. Thank you.
Sure, I'll remind. So just as a reminder, there's been a question or point of order that this is the public hearing for all three requests. So this is your opportunity to address the body or raise questions that the applicant will have the opportunity to respond to in a moment. So third and final time of those wishing to speak in opposition to the request. Yes, yes, ma'am. I can barely see the chair in front of you, please. Thank you. The light has to be on.
Okay. My name is Heidi Coombs. I've lived in the area for the last 30 years. We have an economically depressed community. Adding another hospital to this area just means that we're going to divide the same amount of people into two different places, thus creating higher healthcare costs for both institutions. That doesn't seem like a very economical thing to do without bringing more business here first. Second of all, I have 4 children that I've raised in this community. Every year, I solicit from Aspirus for fundraising for my children. And every year, I'm told by Aspirus that we're out of their community. What does that say to you? It says a lot to me. Riverview Ministry, Marshfield, they all donate to our kids. Not Aspirus. Keep your eye on it.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the request? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Michelle Kaiser. I was born in Wisconsin Rapids. I live in Nakusa. I grew up in Port Edward, so I've lived here for all of my 30 years. I just have a couple of questions. I know a lot of people, Riverview does hire out their ER. They use Infinity, and then we also do have the hospitalists. I guess my couple of questions are, you know, everybody seems to think that Aspirus is going to staff locally and, oh, they're not going to hire out and whatever. I just want to know how they're going to staff their ER and how they were going to staff their, you know, their inpatients. Who's going to see their inpatients? Is it going to be something like that or not? So I guess I'm just curious about those two questions because I know a lot of people seem to think that's not going to be the case, so they're going to be all, you know, in-house and everything like that. But that's kind of the way the healthcare is going. It's going towards the, you know, hospitalist thing. So I was just curious about that.
Thank you. They'll have the opportunity to respond. I see a hand in the back. Please come to the podium.
My name is Deanna Waltz. I live at 970 First Avenue South. I've been listening to the whole hearing here, and what I've not heard yet is more specifics about what Aspirus is planning to do, and specifically how many duplicate services there will be between Riverview Hospital and Aspirus in their hospital and clinic. Thank you.
And I think I can respond to that one just because the public hearing is on the 3 requests in front of the body tonight. Annexation, whether or not the commission feels that the annexation is appropriate, the conditional use, and then the rezoning of the property that they plan to purchase. Just to point out that some of these things the commission can weigh in their decision, maybe, but I can't say that, that we can demand them of some of these pieces. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the request? And I will ask the requester to come back up, and they'll have some time. I said 10 minutes at the beginning to address. I wrote down at least 8 concerns that were raised, so if somebody from Aspirus would like to come forward. Ma'am? Sure, yeah, you'll be the final one. I said at least 3 times that, sure, no problem. I just don't want the next person to raise their hand too and want to make a statement after we've
I'm Katie Schneider, and I live on Rounds Round in Wisconsin Rapids. And I have worked for Riverview for 24 years. I'm a social worker by background. And I have to say I appreciate the comments by Dr. Kostyuk and have enjoyed a really good working relationship with all of the fine people at Aspirus. They're good people, no doubt about it. It's an unfortunate situation we find ourselves in. My comments I wanted to make were in regards to patient rights. As a social worker and the person who's responsible for the Joint Commission chapter that deals with patient rights, it is a patient's right that for somebody who is put in the hospital as an inpatient to have their primary physician notified of their admission to the hospital. I cannot speak for any other hospital or organization, but I can tell you, as the person responsible for that chapter, that that happens at Riverview Hospital. Every patient who is admitted to the hospital is asked if they want their personal physician notified of their admission, and we follow through with that request. The other thing that I would just like to comment on, again, about patient rights, I certainly understand that the Affordable Care Act is changing the landscape for reimbursement and for healthcare delivery. However, what's not changing is a patient's right to choose. And so we may want to try to control quality, cost, and keep people in the same system, but that borders on not allowing the patient free choice of where they would want to seek health care. Maybe they would want to have a heart specialist at Aspirus. Maybe they would want to have a heart specialist at Marshfield. That choice should be honored instead of people being steered to one organization versus another for what we feel should be good quality care. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Dr. Volker, if you'd like to come up and respond to the requests or points that were raised by the
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be glad to. And I think I've got most of them written down here. These won't necessarily be in any particular order. The last question that was brought up about referrals and not being allowed to go where you want to go. I'm a practicing doctor and have been since we joined Aspirus almost 10 years ago. One of the tenets we had with them when we joined, and I'm also on the board of directors of Aspirus, one of our tenets as a board of directors is the patient always has the right to choose. We can recommend where we'd like them to go. We can tell them why. We can suggest that their care may be better coordinated if they get their heart care in Wausau. But if they say, no, I'd rather go to Marshfield, then they go to Marshfield. I'm sure things happen, but that certainly, patients not being given the choice at Aspirus certainly cannot happen with any frequency. I'm the president of Aspirus Doctors Clinic, and if that happens and there's a complaint, I will know about it, and I don't know of any complaints like that, at least in the last several years. We have, one of our demands as doctors was the patients reserve the right to go where they want to, and one of Aspirus's tenets is that same thing. So we will not force patients to go anywhere. Secondly, as far as building another hospital, increasing the cost of care, there are 2 comments there. One is, in the old system, that may very well have been true, but nowadays payers won't let us charge more just because it costs us more to provide the service. So if we want to put in lots of extra stuff and spend lots more money taking care of you, the insurance company, Medicare, Medicaid is still going to pay us exactly the same amount. So it's not going to increase the cost of care to the patients. There was also a study done in the Milwaukee area that just came out in the Journal Sentinel about a month ago. There were a couple of competing hospital systems that each built another hospital, and it was argued that they don't need any more hospitals down there. But after they looked at all of the financials, they found that the cost of healthcare actually went down because of the competition. So just having another hospital in town does not necessarily mean the costs are going to go up. Next, the helipad came up as a question. There are two issues there. First of all, you need to be aware that this is a helipad just for landing and either dropping off or picking up patients who need to be transported. It's not a helipad where there would be a based helicopter there. So we would anticipate no more than maybe 3 trips to the hospital a month. It won't be a frequent event. Secondly, it'll be more rapid care, and when you need a helicopter, you need it rapidly. Because of the flight paths into the airport, Riverview is situated such that if you are flown out of or into Riverview, the helicopter has to land at the airport, and then you're ground transported by ambulance to or from Riverview. This is going to be much quicker to simply go the 200 or 300 feet from the hospital into the helicopter and fly away. Next, there was a question of the land to the north of the existing doctor's clinic. While we were looking at land available, we thought it was wise to purchase all the land that was available adjacent to the clinic in case we need it in the future. Right now, we have no plans at all for that. We don't see any immediate need for parking or anything else. We plan to buy the land and leave it exactly the way it is. We don't foresee any reason why we would need Saratoga Street opened up either way off of the land that we're purchasing. Our only entrance and exit for the public to the facility will be Peach Street off of Highway 54. If you look at the plans, there is also another employee and ambulance drive that empties onto Chestnut, but all of the public traffic will be onto 54 from Peach Street. And that's both now and with any foreseeable expansion into the land to the north that goes up toward Saratoga. Traffic. I mentioned that our only entrance will be the Peach Street entrance off of 54. There was some concern about traffic, and when we built the clinic originally, we had it wired for a stoplight at the intersection of Peach and 54. We would certainly expect that that would be part of this project, whether it comes as a condition or whether it's just something the city asks us to do later. But as I understand it, by our previous agreement with the city to build the current clinic, when the city says they want that light, at our cost, it goes up. So we have no objections. In fact, we would like to have a light there. Question came up about emergency room doctors. Our plan is to recruit full-time emergency room doctors, and we would expect that they would be living locally just like the rest of us. The hospitalist program is at Riverview, and I know that a lot of people are not happy with hospitalists. The analogy I use is I'm also not happy that I can't shop at a mom and pop grocery store anymore. I love those things, but times have changed, and it's just not possible. We found it absolutely impossible to recruit new doctors to take care of patients in Wisconsin Rapids if we didn't have a hospitalist program anymore. Doctors, particularly coming out of training, do not want to have the same hours and lifestyle that we did when we were on call all night, admit patients to the hospital, take care of our own patients in the hospital all the time. That being said, we're at a unique opportunity that we can look at what is needed in the future. What does the hospital of the future bring? And in my vision, it brings a system where the patients are taken care of efficiently in the hospital and the primary care doctor knows what's going on with them all the time. We haven't finalized the hospitalist program, but again, and I am heavily involved in the planning of this, my vision is that the primary care doctor will be heavily involved. Perhaps not the one who does the history and physical, perhaps not the one who writes the orders, but someone who is talking to the hospitalist daily, who can walk down the hall and see the patient every day, whether they're writing orders or not. So yes, we plan to have a hospitalist program, but it can be a much kinder and friendlier hospitalist program, one that hopefully goes back more toward the way things used to be. I think I'm just about done. One more item, and that is, it was brought up that Norbert Arndt, who he and his brother Charlie were the two founders of Aspirus Doctors Clinic 58 years ago. It was brought up that Norbert Arndt would not like this proposal. I happen to know someone who knows Norbert Arndt better than anyone else in this building, including the person who made those comments, and that is his daughter Kathleen, who's sitting 2 seats to my left. And she vehemently objects to that statement. He would be in favor of this, and I think it's personally insulting to suggest otherwise without really knowing. And that's all of the questions I had, unless the commission has questions.
Yeah, maybe stay by the podium, and we'll now move into the commission's questions and discussion items and clarification items that we have of the request. I'm sorry? Yeah, so I will close the public hearing officially, and then we'll move into now commissioners' conversation.
I'd like to talk about that. We've been painted a very rosy picture here of what's going to happen with Aspirus, and there's no question it's a beautiful building. I've looked at everything. There's no question about that. But again, is there room for another hospital in Wisconsin Rapids? Obviously not. Riverview Hospital, as far as I know, is not full at this time. So, you know, it's pretty redundant to build another hospital. That's going to destroy a lot of Riverview Hospital's attendance and so forth. You talked about the economics of the thing. You know that all of the money, all of the revenue that comes into Wisconsin Rapids to Riverview Hospital stays here. And look, and it's obvious by all of the expansion they've done over the years. It's beautiful. We have a great facility. Riverview Hospital has been here longer than probably anybody in this room has lived. There's no question about that. The other thing I might add is that you talked about employment in yours, and there's no question you would have additional employment. But it's probably offset by the amount of layoffs that Riverview Hospital may have to occur. It may have to happen. If they have reduced number of people in the hospital, patients, obviously they don't need the people to take care of these people either. I firmly object to anything that's going to destroy or hurt Riverview Hospital. I was born, all of us were probably in the room that have lived here all of our lives, were born there, probably went through many, many surgeries there and things of this nature. I don't see any reason, although I'm sure that there are some, that they couldn't co-op somehow with Riverview Hospital and make it advantageous for both of you. You're going to suffer obviously as much as they are, because you're not going to be full either, I wouldn't think. I think that really what we should do maybe was do an independent study of the feasibility of another hospital in this town. We're a small city. Small area, I should say, not city, but I just don't think we can support another hospital. And I'm usually in favor of anything that's good for Wisconsin Rapids as far as growth is concerned, and I am. But I'm afraid that this is going to hurt Riverview Hospital drastically, and I firmly oppose that.
Okay, commissioners, any other conversation?
Chairman, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
With all respect to you, Dr. Velker, and and Aspirus staff. I've lived in this town for 60 years, and I've doctored with you, and you've helped me, and I need you. I don't know anything about healthcare. It's just you've helped me. My allegiance is with Riverview Hospital. I've worked there, but recently I've seen some of their state-of-the-art equipment go in that it's incredible, and along with the cost and what it can do, and I've seen it up close. And I can't understand if there's duplications, and Riverview, I understand they don't have full-time employees in that department. I just don't, I see a really quite an impact on the jobs around here. If I could just say something about the data on the construction of the last Aspirus is really inaccurate. I just happen to be a contractor, and there's several contractors in this town that they got a chance to bid it, but it was on a holiday weekend, and we had 3 days, and that's the truth. We had 3 days to bid that Aspirus clinic. Mechanical contractors. I know this for a fact. I've done the research. So, again, my doctor is at Aspirus, and it's gonna stay that way, but I've really contemplated coming to Riverview, and I love Riverview. So, I'm a Riverview man. I'm sorry. I'm on Fran's side.
Dr. Volker, there are some concerns that were raised by two commissioners. Did you want to respond before
Yes,
I keep
yeah.
allowing other commissioners to raise additional concerns?
First question was, do we need another hospital in this town? And I think a better question is, do we need another way of delivering health care in this town? What we've explained as our vision of health care in the future has less to do with the building that the health care is delivered in and more with the process with which that care is delivered. We have tried to talk to Riverview about some kind of affiliation, but Riverview's vision of the future of healthcare is not the same as Aspirus's vision. We feel very strongly that this picture that we've painted of where healthcare is going is what needs to be done. And if we can't do that with Riverview, it's something we've got to do on our own. Another question came up about the money that, if you have two hospitals, take that money and split it up. We are planning to bring new procedures into town. So there will be certainly a net influx of money coming into town with this program.
Commissioner?
Yes, I just have a few things. I guess, obviously, this is a very emotional subject, and questions on both sides, and I have friends on both sides. As the Planning Commission, my understanding is, looking at, what's best for the city, what we're supposed to be doing for the city. And obviously, a lot of this will go over to the council next. But I guess just a couple questions that I had, and Dr. Velker, I don't even know if you can answer these, but I would just be curious about, for further studies with Riverview Hospital, where we were at with, the percentage of their rooms currently being used, that type of thing. And I know that's not a question for you, but that is something that I have a question on. With Aspirus, you say some new procedures, some new things coming to town. Can you expand on that at all, please?
We are currently in the phase of looking at programming, so I can't give you any definitive answers on any of that. One area we've looked very strongly at is a heart program and what new heart services can we bring to town. Again, some of these are programs or services, not necessarily procedures. A congestive heart failure clinic has been proven in other areas to really keep people out of the hospital. We've used the program at Aspirus, but it's hard to convince a patient to travel 3 times a week up to Wausau to go to their heart failure clinic. There are things we can do with advanced echocardiographic procedures, with more advanced forms of pacemakers and defibrillators that can be put in Wisconsin Rapids and won't require a trip out of town. Advanced GI procedures, vascular procedures. And off the top of my head, I think those are the ones that have jumped out at us. We're doing a full look at the programming of all of the healthcare we deliver and see where we could bring more services to town.
Todd, please.
Good evening. With all due respect to the fellow committee members, I think this is an opportunity for questions and answers rather than making statements about this proposal. I wish, with that being said, I wish the best for all in this room, continued employment, continued good health. With the annexation application on the larger parcel, I see the subject property looking for the annexation to go further east on Chestnut Street and then actually down, I believe it's 23rd Street. Could you tell me the reason for that?
Adam, is that little extension? I'll let you answer that, because that has nothing to do with Aspirus.
Yeah, I'll just field that one, because actually Aspirus, when they approached the city for the annexation, they are only purchasing, obviously, the properties of which they're looking to expand on. This is an unusual piece of property because it's basically a donut hole in the city limits. So the proposed extension down Chestnut and 23rd Street actually fills in the remainder of basically of how that donut hole was created. So the state always asks us to get rid of these little islands and fingers that exist. So that's why it's being proposed to basically take in that additional right-of-way.
Commissioners, further questions or comments for the requester? Do you have something?
I just wanted to, I've gone through the staff reports, and what I feel is my charge as a commission member, this project meets the city's requirements, and based on Adam's recommendations, I see no reason to vote against these projects.
Adam, did you want to take the opportunity to talk about the staff report and recommendations and conditions?
Certainly. And just to kind of bring things around, there's 3 requests before you, and so I'm going to try and split them up and make sure that I'm covering them individually to try and avoid some confusion. So the first item before you is the annexation itself. Generally speaking, the question before the commission and then ultimately the council is this property appropriate to be within the city and serviced by the city? That's really the question before you for an annexation. As I pointed out previously, this is an island that is basically surrounded by the city on all sides except for a little finger of right-of-way. It is zoned agriculture, I believe, in the town of Grand Rapids. If it wants a city sewer and or water to develop, the city does have a requirement that it needs to be annexed into the city. So any type of development, it would be my recommendation that this property actually be in the city because then it would have access to those public utilities. So that would be my recommendation on the annexation. Second question before the commission is rezoning. Basically, when a property is annexed into the city, its default zoning is R2, which is 1-family and 2-family residential. And then an applicant or a property owner has the ability to request a rezoning. Obviously, for the purpose of this particular applicant, a single-family and a 2-family district was not appropriate, so they are requesting B5, which is our, I can't remember our names, general mixed-use district is the B5 district. In reviewing this request, basically one of the main tools that staff uses for the recommendation is looking at our comprehensive plan, which is the long-term vision of the city. Basically, it was adopted in the year 2010, trying to outline where the city wanted to go over the next 20 years, give or take. That comprehensive plan does show this area as being mixed use, which basically the mixed use category calls for a combination of commercial, office, and residential uses. The description of the B5 district specifically references that land use category within its purpose statement found within the zoning ordinance. So basically, we have a comprehensive plan showing it for mixed use. The B5 district is specifically for that type of land use. So when looking at those factors, that's one of the reasons we recommended approval of this rezoning. The other thing we try to look at is the trend of development and the surrounding neighborhood for the piece of property. Obviously, the trend of development within the general area has been a transition from what were some vacant properties on the west side of 54 and the east side of 54 into basically a mixed-use type of environment. You have a mixture of office, commercial, and residential, basically in accordance with the plan. So this did not seem out of line, in my opinion, obviously, based on the trend of development in the area. So those were basically the factors that we looked at for rezoning. Just to clarify, rezoning is basically a yes or a no, so there's no ability really to put conditions of approval on a rezoning. It's either is that land use appropriate or is that land use not appropriate. So we are recommending approval of that. And then the third and final request before the commission is a conditional use. Basically, within our B5 district, any type of use is actually considered a B5, or is considered a conditional use. What that means is if you are zone B5, there is no use that you can just pull a building permit on. Everything requires a conditional use, which means a public hearing before this body and city council approval. So within the B5 district, there's approximately 12 to 15 different land use categories you can apply for. One of those is personal and professional services, which is what the applicant is applying for. This is the more specific land use question. It's more specific than the annexation or the rezoning. And the question, at least for staff, basically comes down to, is this type of land use appropriate in this location, once again? So when we're looking at the land use of personal and professional services, that includes everything, obviously, from a more intense use like a hospital down to a veterinary clinic or a chiropractor's office. Anything that really it's walk-in and appointment scheduling, and you're being provided some sort of service. Again, based on the location on 54, based on the trend of development, based on all those factors, planning staff felt that this type of land use is appropriate in this location. What is unique about the conditional use is the ability for the commission to recommend and ultimately the city council to adopt conditions of approval, hence the name conditional use. So in my recommendation, which again was for approval, I did put together a list of approximately, well, not approximately, of 12 conditions that would be specific to this use, meaning if this particular development moves forward, they could only do so subject to those 12 conditions. So, yes, and I don't know if you guys want me to cover the actual conditions or not, but
Adam, there's a lot of conditions, and those could come back in front of this commission too.
yeah, if in the future something changes and they did not, or did not isn't probably the right word, but plans changed and they could not meet these conditions, they would have to go through the same process basically to change any of those conditions if they are adopted.
Any questions for staff from the commissioners?
I'd like to ask Dr. Belker, do you believe that this will do great harm to Riverview? You believe it?
I don't think it necessarily has to. Studies have shown that quality healthcare systems do well if they maintain their quality. And that's been looked at all over the place. One piece that we're missing about taking the one hospital's business and splitting in two is we do plan, like I said, to bring new services in. But what I didn't mention is we also plan to bring a lot more patients in who normally are seen at Marshfield and now wouldn't have to be transferred to Marshfield. They could stay in Wisconsin Rapids. And particularly with a full-time cardiology presence, we should be able to handle a lot more patients that otherwise did go out of town. So in answer to your question, no, I don't think it has to harm Riverview significantly. I'm sure there will be some effect, but lots of things have effect on all of our businesses, and we need to take the current state of affairs into account and adjust to those.
And another question I have is the employment situation. Are these going to be full-time jobs, and are they going to be local jobs, or are these going to be shipped in from other cities?
Yeah, two clarifications. First of all, one of the guests here did talk about the jobs that are coming down from Wausau. Of our 100 and some employees, there are only 3 positions that do that. And we had good business reasons why we needed to take them from Wausau rather than have our own. So that means, you know, that's 3 out of 100 and something. That's well over 95% currently live in the area. All of our new jobs, right now we can't see from a programming standpoint why anyone would be brought in from elsewhere that requires programming, but I'm comfortable in saying it would at least be the 95% local again. We would expect that they're going to be living in the community and, you know, paying their taxes here too.
Dr. Velker, you mentioned that you look to gain patients from people that are seeking care elsewhere. Do you, I imagine there's studies on this, do you know by chance right now how many people in our community or a percentage of people that are doctoring in, say, Marshfield instead of Rapids or Stevens Point or Wausau? Do you have a number on that or a percentage by chance?
What's that? Yeah, I don't know if I have a person number, but we do have a dollar number, and I believe it's $110 million is spent on healthcare for people in this community. 23 million of that stays in this community. And again, obviously, some of that would have to leave, but, you know, in our rough look at the numbers, we would anticipate that, you know, at least a third of that should be able to stay or come back. So, you know, I don't know what that actually amounts to, but it's, what's that? 39 million of that money does go to Marshfield right now, and a good percentage of that we should be able to get back. And to some degree, the dollars do translate into patients. I just don't have that multiplier for you.
I have a question. Is there any information on other communities of our same size? You mentioned Milwaukee. Milwaukee's a lot bigger than us. Is there other communities that, you know, have shown either, you know, that positive growth for both parties that you had mentioned that's very similar to, you know, our demographics here in Wisconsin Rapids and our size?
Off the top of my head, I don't know of any, and I'm looking at others and can't say that I do. It did happen in Wausau. Marshfield, or Ministry Healthcare, built the Weston Hospital in Wausau quite a few years ago, and Aspirus Wausau Hospital took a dip in their business, but crept back up and is doing very well again. Wausau is bigger than Wisconsin Rapids. It is a tertiary care center, but, you know, it's much more similar than we are to Milwaukee.
Dr. Velker? Is there orthopedic involvement here with Aspirus being right across the street from a?
Yeah, again, we haven't completed programming, but we do expect to have orthopedic work, and our preference is to work with local providers in all specialties, if at all possible. It's going to have to be providers who buy into our understanding of the way healthcare is going and the realities of the Affordable Care Act, but our intention would be to use local providers.
Dr. Belcher, did you, is it true that you closed in Stevens Point and maybe Rhinelander? Is this true?
That we closed?
Closed your facilities or office?
No.
You've not closed your office?
No, we have a clinic in Stevens Point that is open and will be in the long-term plan. That's, again, I'm on the board of Aspirus. I would know if it's not. That's going to stay open. And we have a clinic in Rhinelander that we are keeping open.
Neither one are closed?
No, nor are there any plans to do so.
Shane, nobody, okay. Commissioners, any other comments or questions? Tim?
With Aspirus, the outside clinics, and I don't understand all the workings of a hospital completely, but I know we have some outside clinics for, and even they're located in the hospital for maybe imaging and orthopedics and things like that. How does Aspirus plan to work with those people? Or, I mean, is there a plan with that?
You mean clinics that have their own business but aren't part of Riverview Hospital, like Wisconsin River Orthopedics or something?
Correct. Maybe somebody like that where they, you know, is there going to be a pressure on a clinic like that to choose between you or Riverview?
No. The pressure will be to understand how healthcare reform is changing the rules and to be able to work within that system. And I think most of them do understand that. However, we will not be asking people to be exclusively our orthopedist or ENT doctor or whatever. You know, if somebody wants to provide those services for us and also provide those services at Riverview, that's fine.
Dr. Velker, is your offices, main offices where?
At Aspirus Doctors Clinic on,
Your main,
54.
I mean, of Aspirus.
oh, Aspirus's main office is in Wausau, at
Wausau.
Aspirus Wausau Hospital.
So conceivably, after everything is said and done, the day-to-day revenue will go to Wausau?
They've never been that way, and again, being on the board, I'm privy to a lot of this information. Typically, clinics lose money. The hospital, the mothership hospital, tends to make that up because of the tertiary care referrals, which tend to be more costly procedures. So, clinics are budgeted, a clinic our size is budgeted to lose somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million a year. So Aspirus is actually pumping money in down here. They are not sucking the money out that we get. Their success is based on getting money out of the referrals that we send up when they need to be brought up there. Now, the change in healthcare reform changes that dynamic somewhat, but still, Aspirus is incredibly understanding that they need to have clinics and providing practitioners, doctors, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, or they're not going to get patients. So they really do support all of the clinics.
But we just know that at Riverview Hospital, every dime that comes in stays here. This money, and it's obvious by the, like I say, the expansions that they've put on, and I'm sure that there's many more on the table to come. This probably would destroy that. Also, I'd like to make mention too that after Aspirus came here, and I think I'm right in saying this, but correct me if I'm wrong, but at one time, imaging department in Riverview were full-time jobs. They're now down to part-time jobs. And is that right? Am I right in saying this? That's what I've been told. So already damage has been done. Already to Riverview Hospital.
Okay, I'm going to get control of the meeting again, so if anyone would like to speak, please indicate so I can recognize you, and we can also keep order amongst the commission. So anybody wishing to speak? Kelly, please.
One last thing, and I'm sorry if I missed this, is the hospital, is that, do they pay taxes?
They do.
They do, okay.
Not Riverview Hospital,
Okay. And
They're
clinics?
tax exempt.
Clinics do too, oh, okay.
but Aspirus does pay property taxes.
The Aspirus Clinic pays property taxes. In Wisconsin, not-for-profit hospitals, is my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but not-for-profit hospitals do not pay property tax. There was a condition a few years ago where Marshfield Clinic, I believe it was in Mosinee, was going to not pay property taxes on their clinic there because it's not-for-profit. But really, a not-for-profit clinic starts because a not-for-profit corporation buys a for-profit clinic, and nothing else changes there, so it's silly that that property tax stream would just shrivel up. So the agreement was made by Marshfield, and we were researching this. There's a little dispute, is it by statute or not, but all not-for-profit clinics do pay property tax. Now, the hospitals do not, so the hospital component of this proposal would not pay property tax, but there's a large clinic expansion, and that's where the increase in property tax comes in.
Any other commissioner? Shane, please.
I'm just trying to understand what an impact of 20 beds in a hospital can truly do, and I don't know who the correct person to direct that to. It just seems like it's a very small piece to, compared to Riverview. I don't know how many beds are at Riverview, and if I can get an answer on that.
Please.
And I don't know if I can tell you exactly. I could probably ask somebody who can. How many beds you got? If I had to guess, I think they're licensed for 80 or 90, and I would think their census runs in the 30 to 40 range most of the time, but I don't have any of that information.
Thank you for that.
Oh. Okay, thank you. Any other concerns or questions for the requester from the commission? All right. We'll make, Tim, please.
This is more getting into this, maybe I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but my question would be on 20th Street. Is there going to be a dedicated right-of-way there?
Dave, I'll let you comment on that because we've gone back and forth on that discussion.
Okay, the city has an official map where we plan for future streets. And our official map, because 20th Street is a 40-line street, we require a 66-foot right-of-way. We have 33 feet on the west side, and as we do with anybody else that annexes or have certified surveys, we require a dedication to match our official map. So yes, we would require a 33-foot dedication for 20th Street. Right now, there's no plans to construct 20th Street. That's usually whoever develops in the area, if they want it, then the city would consider it.
And we've talked to Adam about that. We're aware of that. That fits well with our plans. We have absolutely no desire to do anything with 20th Street. Whether you, whatever you want to do, if you want to abandon it, that still serves our purposes fine. We actually like it the way it is because there's a nice berm and barrier between the land we're purchasing and 20th.
Tim, yes.
I guess my question would be for Dave. So these lots would be the lots to the west of 20th. What's the impact on those people there? Are they going to have to pay for curb and gutter type thing?
Well, if they want to develop the lots, we don't have sewer and water available for the lots. So in the future, when those develop, yes, there would be special assessments for water main, sewer, and street and curb and gutter. The city has policies that if it's your backyard or you combine it with your other property, you don't pay because it's your second side. But it's property owner driven on 20th the way it is now, because when they want to provide services to those lots, then the city would consider reconstructing or constructing the street.
Anything further on that, Tim? Any other questions or comments for the requester? I'll make a few comments and wanted to let everybody else have the opportunity in the requester. You can take a seat so you don't have to sit anywhere. I don't think I have any questions for you. You know, I wasn't here in 2010 when my predecessor made the decision and others to sit here in the commission at the time to allow Aspirus Doctors Clinic to expand on 54 on the west side of 54. And I don't know how I would have been on that decision, if I would have supported it or not. That battle's been fought and it's won. Aspirus has been cited. Their doctor's clinic exists on the west side of Highway 54. And today, sitting in the chair and looking at the Aspirus prospect of the development there and the expansion, to say that we can't allow the annexation to occur, the rezoning and the conditions because we don't want another community hospital is something that I can't do. I don't have that ability to say that. And you know, unfortunately, we're here. We have a great community hospital that served this community well and will continue to serve this community well. And I do want to make a comment, too, about the healthcare spend, as the Wisconsin Hospital Association has provided some market detail of our community and what's being spent here in Wisconsin Rapids, Marshfield, Stevens Point, Wausau, and other places. And only 22% of our total spend of those that live in the Wisconsin Rapids market, only 22% of that spend is spent here in Wisconsin Rapids. 37% of that spend, or $141 million annually, is spent in the city of Marshfield. Pretty astonishing number if you ask me when you compare that only $84 million is spent here in Wisconsin Rapids. Stevens Point, about 36%, $36 million is spent up in Stevens Point. So I think unless you have the numbers and the detail, you can't speak but from a position of anecdotal information. So I want to point that out, that there's some facts and some evidence in the data that is put out by the two entities, lobbying group and association within the Wisconsin Hospital Association. So I would mention that of the $382 million that's spent by people in our area, only 22% is spent here in Rapids, and 37% is spent in Marshfield. So I want to point that out, that there's some serious spend being referred out. So I can't fault Aspirus for recognizing opportunity in that. And those are numbers from 2013. You know, the way I look at this deal, Aspirus is coming to our area with this solution whether it's in the city of Wisconsin Rapids, or I see my counterpart from the village of Buren is here as well, as I understand that there's options on that land as well. So if the city and the city council and the commission deny the annexation or others, this battle is going to continue to be fought in our next door neighbors in the village of Buren. So I want to point that out. I feel the annexation is appropriate. It's never going to develop in any other way unless it's in the city of Wisconsin Rapids, so the annexation request is consistent and appropriate. The comprehensive plan, as the staff report indicates, is consistent as well. And thirdly, the conditions, and I believe we've vetted a lot of the conditions with a lot of, scrutiny of what exactly, if we're going to do this, if the city's in a position to tell them to do anything, that they're doing this right. Unfortunately, we can't meddle in the politics of the board of directors and what was said and what was tried to be done to whether it was any sort of affiliation with the community hospital or not. We're not in any position to be able to discuss that, and unfortunately, that's a responsibility of the two entities. So I can't, and I'm not going to make comments that have been made regarding that. That's up to the two entities to work out in the politics and the business that they're in. So those are my comments. I wanted to point them out. As I mentioned, it's a tough deal regardless, and I know there's a lot of livelihoods and a lot of economic decisions and others that are going to ride on this decision tonight. Thankfully, there is some time, should the commission approve it, to be able to work through some of these things, and I would challenge the two entities. I've had many conversations with both of them to find out ways and opportunities for the two to collaborate effectively, so that way one institution truly isn't the loser and the community isn't losing ultimately. So those are my comments, and I would entertain a motion on the, we'll do each of the items separately for the minutes and for the roll. So the first one we've got is the annexation request. Commissioners?
I would make a motion that we approve the annexation requests for the 16.5 acres.
We've got a motion to approve.
I'll
with
second that
Berkey, and the
motion.
second with Shane. Any discussion on the annexation request? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye, or do we have to do a roll call vote?
We don't have to, but if
Okay, Dave likes the roll call vote. We'll do, so, Shane, if you'd like to start with
Aye.
your vote. Thank you.
I can't, it's hard up here tonight. It's hard, no.
I vote no. Excuse me.
With one of the answers I received tonight, I have to vote no.
I vote yes.
And aye. Motion carries 4-3. The next item on the agenda on the action is the action on Plan 140464, which is the request to change in zoning from R2 one family and two family to B5, the general mixed use district. And I've already read the subject properties that they're looking to purchase for the rezoning. Commissioners, I'd entertain a motion on that request.
I motion to approve.
We have a motion by Shane to approve. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Ferkey. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote, and same exercise if we want to start on that end, please, and give Dave your vote.
I vote yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
No. Yes.
Yes. Motion passes 4-3. And next item on the agenda is the referral from I'm reading it ahead of myself here. Action on Plan 140465 Aspirus Clinics, in which the applicant is requesting a conditional use to allow personal and professional services within the B5 General Mixed Use District. The subject properties are generally located at the northeast corner of Chestnut Street and 20th Street South. Commissioners, what are your wishes regarding that request?
I would make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Ferkey to approve,
I'll second that.
and a second by Shane. And we'll do the same exercise.
Mayor?
I'm sorry?
Just want to clarify if that's subject to the conditions recommended or not.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, was the motion with the conditions recommended in the staff report?
Yes.
And the second? You're okay with that? All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Went the other way, but yes.
Thank you for calling that out. We wouldn't want anybody to get away with anything that we've worked so hard to include. Move into, any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, do the same exercise, move into a vote.
I vote yes.
Yes.
No.
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 Yes.
And yes. Motion passes 4-3. And that takes care of our action on the two public hearings and the annexation request. I thank you all for being here. This will go on to this full city council in 2 weeks on August 19th. There will not be a public hearing at the council, but you certainly can show up and attend and listen to any sort of debate or dialogue that may occur at the council. So thank you again for being here, and we'll move into the balance of our agenda. I'll give you a moment to depart. We're going to have to bring them up. We have to bring people forward.
We got the fence yet to do, huh?
Yep. Oh, I've also got a request from the secretary to make sure you sign in if you have not done so. There should be a sign-up sheet. I see Alderperson Dolan's got it over there. So in the front corner here, please sign in. Okay, we'll move into item number 11 on our agenda is the referral from Board of Zoning Appeals. The Board of Zoning Appeals is requesting that the city consider an update to the fencing regulations which would allow tenants to erect wire fencing for up to 3 years as a temporary fence. Commissioners, there is a report from the Board of Zoning Appeals in front of you with some supporting information and photos. I'd encourage you to talk to, I guess, is Carol Cubza here? Carol is here. Okay, I see you, Carol. Adam, do you want to maybe give the commission an overview on the request?
Certainly. It's been probably about a couple months ago, but we got a complaint regarding a fence located within the city. It was inspected by our building inspector, and at that time, the owner of the property was notified that they had erected a fence that was not in compliance with the zoning ordinance, and in addition, a permit hadn't been pulled. So they were told to bring the fence into compliance, which would involve pulling a permit and replacing the fence under materials that are permitted underneath the zoning ordinance. At that time, the property owner chose to appeal the decision of the building inspector, basically stating that it should be a permitted fence within the city. So that appeal does go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they have the ability, they basically act on that appeal. The appeal process is different than a variance process. An appeal really is whether or not the enforcing officer interpreted the code and enforced the code correctly. So during the discussions at the Board of Zoning Appeals, it appeared that they were okay with this particular fence, but they weren't saying that staff had interpreted the code incorrectly. So they denied the appeal, but they then put forth a referral basically requesting that this type of fencing be allowed. More specifically, they wanted to tie this type of fencing to basically considering it temporary up to 3 years in a situation where there is a tenant living in a home, rather than, so if you were if you own your own property, this type of fencing would not be allowed. If you were a landlord putting up a fence, you would not be able to put up this type of fence. It would only be for a renter to put up on a temporary basis. I'm assuming that their thought process was because they thought that renters obviously generally are not a long-term tenant, so they wouldn't want to put the money into a long-term fence. At the Board of Zoning Appeals request, that's why this referral is on the Plan Commission agenda. At this point, it's a referral, meaning this is not a formal amendment to the zoning ordinance. This is a discussion amongst the commission on whether or not you want staff to process a formal amendment to the zoning ordinance. I'm really looking for direction on whether or not this should be amended or not. And the reason this is being brought to you is because the previous fence ordinance was basically developed by the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission is charged with developing ordinances and sending them forth to the council. So that's why this is the appropriate board for this discussion. If you would like my opinion on it, I'll happily give it to you. Otherwise, we do have Carol Kupza, who is the owner of the property, and I believe she has her renter here as well, the one who had erected the fence, so you can certainly hear their point of view on this issue as well.
Okay, Commissioners, so did you want to have Carol speak to the comment? And I guess as Carol understood that, I mean, the Board of Zoning Appeals was the process for the appeal, and now the question to the commission is whether or not we want to consider this sort of material, right, as a allowed use offense. Commissioners, did you, I guess, Carol, did you want to, since you are here and you've waited for this item, did you want to speak? Just make sure, there's a push button on there. Yep, right at the bottom, and it should light up green.
okay.
We can hear you.
This house is located on the corner of 12th and Alton Street. And that's a very busy corner with a stop sign, which isn't always obeyed. My tenant has 3 little boys. The oldest is 4? 3. Is 3. And in order, I had that deal, 2 years ago when that little boy was killed across the road from my office. And I'll do what I can to prevent something like that happen. So anyhow, they had put up this fence. I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of the rules about it either. But knowing little boys, and one of them takes off, and another next one will follow right along. And 12th Avenue is a busy street, and so is Alton Street. Going over to the post office, the IGA, down to the swimming pool, to Mead Field, all those places. And it's a attractive nuisance, but it's a handy location for somebody with little kids that are going to go to school.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
Adam, what you were going to say before your recommendation, or did you have a recommendation?
I have an opinion. I guess it's not really a recommendation. My main concern is, obviously, I wasn't here when the fence ordinance was adopted, but it's my understanding that a lot of time and effort went into it, and the reason that they adopted the regulations they did was they were trying to maintain a certain quality of fencing. This particular tenant has actually done a very nice job. It's one of the nicest wire fences that doesn't meet our code, but there are plenty that wouldn't be erected that nicely. So my main concern is, number one, allowing fences that are of less quality and less durability than what our ordinance allows. Number two, I understand what they're trying to get at with the time frame and the temporary fencing, but from a staff enforcement point of view, it just makes it very difficult, because then we're having to track. Someone comes in for a fence ordinance, we have to figure out, are you the tenant, are you the landowner, and if you are, one set of rules applies versus another, and then trying to enforce 3 years later, I have to go and make sure it's been taken down, or it needs to be taken down or extended or anything like that. So from an enforcement standpoint, it's just another item that we would have to struggle to do. So I guess my opinion is I'm okay with the fence ordinance as it is, but obviously I can understand where they're coming from.
Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor. Who put up the fence? The homeowner did?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's neat. I'm just asking, who put it up, and if there's a process in the city, it'll be before you do that. But it's a nice. I'm going to vote that we do something good for you. I'm just asking, Okay, well, nice job.
And I would think, I wouldn't be adverse to having them get a permit for a fence, so that you have the right to make sure people understand that. I never knew about fences before, for this.
Well, I'm sorry, Heather. We've, in many cases, allowed changes and variances and this type of thing over the years for whatever reason, not just fences, but other things. I went and looked at the fence myself today, and it's very neatly put in. The stakes are right in a row. It's a beautiful fence. I don't think that the tenant had any idea of breaking the law. I honestly don't think they did. I think they had good intentions when they built it. Chain link fence, which would probably be the thing that they'd have to do, would be quite expensive, and I don't know if this fits in their budget or not. That's not my concern, but this is not unsightly. The idea in it that they have certainly makes sense. If it's a temporary structure, maybe such a thing, we could even set a timeline on it. If maybe when they move, if they do, that maybe they would want to take it down at that point. But right now, it's serving the purpose that they intended it. Thank you.
I have two questions.
Sure.
One, besides material, does it meet the fencing requirements and all the other for the setbacks and all of that stuff on the property? Are we in, what, is it just material, or are we talking about who's going to be able to get a permit? And I also, echo Adam's concern of enforcement. I mean, that's a huge thing, and this particular fence is of nice material, but how do we ensure that all other temporary fences are of this quality?
As far as the other regulations for the ordinance, as far as location and height, for example, those are met. Basically, you can have up to a 4-foot fence within the front yard. It has to be 2 feet off of the sidewalk. Haven't measured it, but looking at the pictures, it appears to be 2 feet off. So the two violations were, one, that it was erected without a permit, and number two, the materials used for the fence. Those were the two violations.
And I guess one more comment. So we are considering this material for only people who are renting a property.
That was the recommendation of the Board of Zoning Appeals, that it be limited to no more than 3 years, so it would be a temporary fence, and that it would be only for renters.
I just have this fear of the slippery slope of, so you have a long-term renter there, and the neighbors come in and they think it's a great fence, and it's affordable option for them, and so then you continue, and somebody's going to be coming in here and appealing for, they want that as their permanent fence. It just seems very selective in who we're allowing this for. And I guess as a community, I think that if we're going to do something, we need to talk about it. And I guess it's kind of awkward to just do it for select people.
Not to mention that's actually the Board of Zoning Appeals' decision to handle the appeal. So now we're thinking policy change. It's going to have to follow something more significant, more broadly. I guess I would echo some of the concerns. It is absolutely a slippery slope. While I fully agree with the safety and the concerns.
Just be responsible if a kid gets hit. That's all. I want to keep
Carol,
the
there's other
children
options.
safe.
There's other options.
No, there aren't.
Drive around town, you know that there are many, many other options for
Yeah,
fencing.
if you want to spend a couple $1,000s.
Well,
And
I'm not saying that they
I'm not
have
gonna
to,
do that.
but, and I agree that, while this was done well, I will promise you, there will be many that will be not done well, and it'll be a nightmare for inspections to inspect and to enforce them ultimately. So, I struggle with that, and I echo Shane's comment about the awkward position we are in, because, the question is not in front of us whether or not we want to allow you today or tomorrow to keep the fence up. It's if we want to amend the ordinance in the city. The Board of Zoning Appeals has already weighed in on the appeal, and they denied it, correct? They read it in there? So this body is not doing anything with the request. It's just having a policy change. Your appeal was already denied.
Yeah, I know.
So I just want to make sure we're clear on what this decision is in front of us. Dave, please.
I guess my feeling on this type of fence is used for agricultural purposes and has no place in the city, because our fence ordinance requires that the good side is toward the neighbor, and in my opinion, there isn't a good side on this type of fence.
Well, the neighbor is Alton Street.
So it's everybody that's driving through the city, in other words.
Well, and that's just the danger. That's just the reason.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am. If you'd like to come and introduce yourself. I think your name is on the Board of Zoning Appeals, but please.
My name is Stephanie Hicks. I have 5 children from 11 to 3 months old. During the school year, that traffic is horrible, absolutely horrible. Nobody stops at a stop sign. Nobody knows how to slow down. My children are well-behaved children, but they do run. They're 2 and 3 years old. They take off. I put up the fence to protect my children. The police department was not doing as I asked and sitting there and patrolling and making sure people were following the rules. My children are my main concern. The fence was done not to code, I understand that, but I am a low-income family. I have 5 children. I cannot afford to put up a chain link fence or a wooden fence or anything of that sort. I put the fence up strictly to protect my children. Now, if somebody wants to come sit out there and patrol and watch and see what I'm talking about, you guys will understand that it is not, that corner is not a safe place to have children, and I am not gonna up and move because my kids are not safe. That, it kind of seems a little ridiculous to me that, you know, $300 worth of fence is causing so much commotion to keep 5 children safe when, you know, it's not hurting anything, it doesn't look bad. We've had, I don't know how many people drive by and tell us how much better the yard looks that we, you know, since we've been there. The, you know, the fence isn't an eyesore, it's not blocking any view, it's not causing any harm, but protecting my children, that's all it's doing.
And you're the renter, right?
I
You're not
am a
the
renter,
homeowner?
yes.
And so have you talked to the homeowner about putting up a compliant fence?
I'm the homeowner.
Right, have you talked to?
No, I'm not putting up a fence.
Oh, okay.
Because the
Well,
next tenant maybe won't need a fence.
this is true, yeah. I guess the people that put up my fence probably thought the same. They didn't know if I was gonna have kids or dogs or everything else to keep, you know, things
And
into.
a chain link and a wooden fence is not cost-effective as a renter. You know,
Right,
I'm not
so I mean,
gonna be
that's what
able
I'm
to take
asking.
it
It's
back
really your
down.
landlord's responsibility. She owns the property. Any improvements that are made to the property enhance the property value and subsequently the property. And so I would think that the landlord would be interested in enhancing the property. I mean,
It is expensive.
Zach, I
Right.
would just say that I
Tim.
echo your comments on that, and if you hadn't asked, I was going to ask Carol that if you feel this strongly about this situation, would you consider putting up a fence?
I would not, because the next tenant wouldn't need a fence. And there is a maintenance problem then. She moves away, and the fence is there, and guess whose job it is to cut the grass all around the bottom of the fence?
I understand that. I also have a property in the city that I rent, that I do mow the lawn at every week myself, and I trim around the fence, and I actually
I don't
have to
a
maintain
spouse
that.
to do that.
Well, and I apologize, but that's part of being a landlord, in my opinion.
I just want to seek clarification that what we're talking about here today, this decision would not really have, it's not this instance. We're talking about making a citywide ordinance change to allow this. And so I just wanted to, that's what we're talking about.
Correct.
It is not this fence and how
Correct.
great this fence is and stuff, that we're not talking about this fence. We're talking about all the other potential fences put up in the community and how can we effectively control those and make sure that it is in line with all of our ordinances that we, you know, work very hard to put together.
That's
Is that-
correct, absolutely correct. Yeah,
Okay.
the Board of Zoning Appeals heard her case and denied the request. So that's been dealt with. Now it's whether or not we want to consider an update to the fencing regulations to allow tenants. So we're selecting a group to treat differently than residents to erect a wire fencing for up to 3 years as a temporary fence. So that's well said, and that's exactly
I
it.
don't understand that. How do you call them? The tenants are a third of the population of Wisconsin Rapids. You need to make consideration for the tenants, too.
I won't get into that too much. I would ask maybe 5 of your peers at the Property Owners Association that I attend, and most of them would probably agree that if there's a fence that needs to be put up, they can charge $25 more a month to the tenant because you invested in the fence. There's an expense. You know, I mean, I understand it's the economics of your business. You're running this business. The city is not running it, but you have to operate your business in the confines of what the city allows and disallows.
I think there's been a mistake has been made here. She didn't purposely do it.
No.
Obviously, she didn't. If she would have asked and had known to ask, she would have known that she couldn't do it. She did do it, and they did a nice job with it. It serves the purpose that they're intended it for. And I think that instead of changing the ordinance, it's just, why can't we do something on a temporary basis and say, because of this, in an isolated case, not to set a precedent or anything, but why can't we just say 3 years, or it's got, within that time, it's got to come down? Would you object to that, Carol?
But that's what the zoning board of appeals already heard that matter. And you're not here to give variances. That isn't your your job.
I understand that.
So that's not an option, unfortunately, to deal with her specifically. It's more a citywide ordinance.
I would like to say I'm very sympathetic to your situation, and I understand that. But I think in this situation, we open a huge can of worms by doing this. If we start to approve it, we're going to have problems.
I'm doing a whole kind
So-
of words, for God's sakes.
But, thank you.
Okay, please.
Can I make a motion to vote on this?
Yeah. Is there a action? It's a referral, so we don't have to take action at all, right? As a referral, so
Well, I
we
think you
can.
could make a recommendation to not refer, that you don't want the ordinance changed, right?
So the motion would be. We have a motion to deny or to not take up the referral requesting the change in the ordinance or the fencing regulations ordinance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Tim and a second by Todd Berkey. All in favor? Any discussion, I should ask? Kelly, please?
Can I abstain from this vote?
Absolutely.
Or personal?
From any one of them, yeah, you bet. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, do you want a roll call vote again, Dave, or can we do voice vote? Okay. You can hear. All right. So all in favor of the motion to deny or to not, I don't know, what's the motion for the record? So I actually captured it. Dave, what do you have written down?
Motion by Tim, second by Todd, not to recommend an ordinance change.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention, right? All right.
Abstain too.
Two abstentions?
I also, yes. I
Okay.
abstain.
And I was in the affirmative. Okay, last item on our agenda is a motion to adjourn. I'd entertain a motion. We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.